Welcome back to the Connective Mind. In the last 3 episodes, we looked at the two-tiered system, the weight of words, and the global momentum towards recognizing Palestine. In this episode, we'll step back into history to see how the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, came into being. To understand it, we need to follow the chain of events that started long before 1964. The British promises. So let's rewind back to 1917. In the middle of World War I, Britain made 2 promises that both couldn't be kept. On one hand, the Balfour Declaration promised a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. On the other, Britain was promising Arab leaders independence if they helped defeat the Ottoman Empire. 2 promises and 1 land. That contradiction sat at the heart of everything that followed. Life under the British Mandate. After the war, the League of Nations gave Britain control of Palestine. This was called the British Mandate, and it lasted until 1948. During that time, Jewish immigration increased steadily, driven by the Zionist movement, the idea that Jewish people needed a homeland of their own. For Palestinians already living there, this felt like a slow displacement. By 1930s, tensions exploded. The Arab Revolt of 1936 to 1939 shook the land. Strikes, protests, and guerrilla warfare against British rule and mass Jewish immigration. This revolt was led by Palestinians themselves, organized by the Arab Higher Committee under Hajjab Ahmed al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. And here's where I want to pause for clarity. When people hear Arab Revolt, many immediately think of the one from World War I, the Lawrence of Arabia story, led from the Arabian Peninsula against the Ottomans. That was a different revolt. This one, in 1930s, was inside Palestine, led by Palestinians on their own soil. Saudi Arabia and the other Arab states gave some financial and moral support, but they did not send armies. The frontline struggle was Palestinian. Britain responded with overwhelming force, mass arrests, executions, and exile of leaders. By the time the revolt was crushed, Palestine's political leadership was badly weakened, a weakness that could have devastating consequences less than a decade later. The Holocaust changed everything. Then came World War II and the Holocaust. 6 million Jews were murdered in Europe. Survivors were left with nowhere to go. For many, Palestine wasn't just a dream anymore. It was only a refuge. But Britain restricted immigration at the very moment it was most needed, limiting entry with the 1939 White Paper to appease Arab opposition. Zionist militias, the Haganahs, the Arguns, and the Levis turned their anger on the British, launching bombings and attacks. Britain found itself fighting not just Arabs' resistance, but Jewish underground groups as well. Partition and Nakba by 1947, Britain was exhausted and wanted out. It handed the problem to the brand new United Nations. The UN proposed a partition plan, 1 Jewish state, 1 Arab state, and Jerusalem was to be international. Jewish leaders accepted, Arab leaders rejected it as unfair, since Jews were only 1/3 of the population, but were given more than half the land. When Britain withdrew in May of 1948, war broke out. Jewish leaders declared the State of Israel. Several Arab states joined the fight. Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon all sent armies. But the problem was that they weren't united. Jordan King Abdullah aimed to annex the West Bank. Egypt moved into Gaza. Syria and Lebanon joined in, but with limited capacity. Iraq sent troops. Though coordination across the borders was weak, these divisions mattered. Instead of presenting a single front, each Arab state pursued its own goals. Palestinians, the people most affected, had little control over the direction of the war. When the fighting ended, they were left displaced, stateless, and without a government of their own. The new Israeli Defense Forces not only held their ground, but pushed further than the UN plan allowed. In the process, more than 700,000 Palestinians were forced from their homes. Villages were emptied or destroyed. Refugee camps swelled across Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza. Palestinians call this the Nakba, the catastrophe. Jerusalem itself was split. West Jerusalem was under Israeli control, East Jerusalem under Jordanian control. The idea of an international city collapsed with Britain's exit. Refugees without a voice. In the years that followed, Palestinians lived in limbo. Refugee camps became semi-permanent cities. The Arab states claimed to speak for them, but each pursued their own goals. Jordan annexed the West Bank. Egypt ran Gaza, and the Palestinians themselves had no unified voice, or I should say, no unified political voice. The PLO is now born. That began to change in the 1950s when a new group formed in exile. The most important of them all was Fatah, founded by Yasser Arafat and others. Fatah in Arabic means conquest or opening. In English, it's often understood as liberation through struggle. Their message was simple. Palestinians could not wait for Arab governments. They had to lead their own fight for liberation. In 1964, the Arab League created the Palestine Liberation Organization, partly to manage this growing militancy, but soon the PLO developed its own identity and brought together different Palestinian factions under one banner. Militancy and the PFLP. It's important to remember that the PLO wasn't a single group. It was an umbrella organization. The largest faction was Fatah, but others like the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine. The PFLP had their own strategies. The PFLP took a harder line. They pioneered hijackings and attacks in the late 60s and early 70s. In 1970, they hijacked multiple planes to Jordan, sparking the crisis known as Black September. That same year, Swiss Air flight was bombed, killing everyone on board, and was linked to the PFLP operatives. These acts gained global headlines, but they also branded the entire PLO as terrorists. Even though not all factions agreed with the tactics, this distinction is key. The PFLP carried out many of the most notorious acts, but the PLO as a whole bore the reputation. When Arafat consolidated leadership, he shifted that image, or he tried to shift that image. He didn't abandon armed struggle, but he worked to bring the PLO into diplomacy. His 1974 UN speech captured this balancing act. I have come bearing an olive branch and a freedom fighter's guns. Do not let the olive branch fall from my hand. Yasser Arafat. By the late 1980s, the PLO officially recognized Israel's right to exist. That was a seismic shift, opening the door to the Oslo Accord and international recognition. But it also divided Palestinians. Some saw it as progress, others felt the revolution had been bargained away. So the PLO was the product of everything that came before Britain's contradictory promises. The Holocaust, the UN Partition, and Nakba, the failures of Arab armies, and decades of statelessness. Each link in the chain made the next inevitable. But this wasn't the end of the story. As the PLO turned towards negotiation, frustration built on the ground. Out of that frustration, a new movement arose in Gaza, one that would challenge the PLO's authority and change the Palestinian politics. Again, that movement was Hamas, and that's where we will go in our next episode. Thanks for joining me on The Connected Mind. If you find this series useful, please share it and subscribe to the channel. Leave comments, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical. I'm J. Andre Faust for The Connected Mind. Take care, and remember, we are not all wired the same. Till next time.